A reading from the Gospel of Thomas, saying 70. Jesus said, "When you give birth to the one within you, that one will save you. If you do not have the one within you, that one will kill you." Or, as Dr. James Cone, the father of Black liberation theology, would say, "If you do not bring forth that which is within you, that thing will kill you. But if you bring forth what is within you, that thing will give you life." This is a word for the people, by the people. May it be heard, received, and find meaning. Hello, UUAC. I'm so glad to be here with you virtually this Sunday as I'm all the way in New York City. You might hear my steam heat kick on. Thank you to my dear friend, Reverend Strauss, for this kind invitation to spend a little time with you all today. I was there last for her ordination, and I look forward to the next time being, prayerfully, in person. Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts find connection and meaning in this moment. Amen. I first heard this text while sitting in Dr. Cone's systematic theology class, and I remember being blown away by the depth presented in so few words. And I'd never heard of the Gospel of Thomas. I imagine it's new to a number of you as well. So let's start with this text. I tend to spend a lot of time working with extra-canonical texts, which are texts that are outside of the traditional collection in the Bible and are written around the same time as everything else in the New Testament, but for one reason or another, were left out. Sometimes the motive feels really clear, like a female voice or author falling prey to #patriarchy, and sometimes we are left to wonder. We don't know why this text was left out, but it shares about half of its sayings with 3 of the 4 Gospels in the traditional canon. The Gospel of Thomas is part of a collection called the Nag Hammadi texts. This collection was named for the city in Egypt where it was found, back in 1945, by a local farmer. He came upon the jar one day while he was working, opened it, and found 12 leather-bound texts inside. These were filled with 52 treatises. We aren't sure how the jar ended up where it did, but another professor of mine, Reverend Dr. Hautausig, holds a story that they were at an old monastery miles upriver. Now, each governing power at that time changed the rules on religion when they came into power. Some strongly enforced what should and should not be read. Tausig holds that soldiers came to the monastery to make sure that the monks were reading the correct scriptures of a particular person in power. But given a heads up, the monks hid the documents in a jar. He imagines it didn't end well for the monks, as the jar remained unopened until it found its way buried way downriver centuries later. Now, this farmer was not able to read the text. Some of the texts, like the one for today, were written in Coptic. Some were in Aramaic. He took the jar home, where his mother began to use the contents as kindling. Luckily, he was convinced by a friend to take some of the writings to be appraised, and, as a result, the remainder were saved. These texts have served to aid in the liberation of the idea of God, the Bible, and widen our understanding of the ancient audiences that read them, while avoiding thousands of years of orthodoxy and orthopraxy that are stacked on top of the Bible. The only complete copy we have of the Gospel of Thomas is the one from this collection. This text fits into the wisdom genre. It gives a fresh look at Jesus as teacher. Its entire contents are 114 sayings attributed to Jesus. No midrash, no context, no focus on death, resurrection, or healing, just sayings. As with a lot of other texts you find in the Bible, the date, authorship, and even the area where it was written are uncertain. As with ancient wisdom literature, the teachings are evocative, not practical. It's meant to get us thinking. The wisdom and knowledge come from readers creatively encountering the sayings and responding in an insightful manner. It's performative theology. It emerges from the reader's and hearer's response to the sayings, their sequence, their variety. The goal is to discover, not learn. It prioritizes living voice over narrative and presence over definition. Since the meaning of the sayings is hidden and must be sought out, the process of gaining wisdom is from one's own thought and experience. which is exactly what the passage for this morning is about. Bringing forth what is within you, mixing it with the light and air to see what's there. Does it change you to learn what's there? Do you make different decisions as a result? There was a movie back in 2015 called Inside Out. Do you remember it? Just to jog your memory. It's about a young girl named Riley whose family moves from the Midwest to San Francisco. Her emotions, joy, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, attempt to help her navigate all the new changes, new city, house, school, etc. They conflict and find themselves ill-equipped to handle it all. Things get out of hand really quickly, and Riley is acting in ways that could land her in potentially dangerous situations. It's not until the emotions work together that Riley finds herself on solid ground again. It's not until she opens up and shares how she's been feeling that her parents are able to help. What she held inside threatened to kill her. It threatened to demolish the relationships around her. It was a slow falling inward, and she didn't know how to get out of it on her own. It was only by bringing forth what was inside her that she found a glimpse of her life. She found relief and release. She found something that she could build on, light and love that she trusted, even when things got tough. Uninterrogated emotions can cause us to act in harmful ways. Some of this we treat as unknown unknowns, completely unexpected and unforeseeable, when they are actually known unknowns, expected and foreseeable. Daring to bring them forth would make them less unknown, perhaps even manageable. The insurrection was foreseeable, but we were all too busy pretending not to notice. We watched people get whipped up into a frenzy. We watched people lose their livelihoods. We watched blatant lies being told out in the public square. History had already given us a model of what happens, but we acted brand new. And our country became the little girl in the Pixar movie, unable to reconcile difficult emotions, unable to tell the truth, to bring forth the real root of the pain. And as a result, people died. Many were injured. If you do not bring forth. And now we find ourselves on the other side, being asked to bridge the gap, to reconcile. And we must do now what we did not do before. Bring forth what we know is deep inside. Though it may be uncomfortable, we know that reconciliation without repentance is manipulation. We can't expect or wait for the systems in place to do this for us. For those systems have faces. We know those people. They are our elected officials. They are our cousins, our friends, our spouses. When will you bring forth what is within you? When will you align with your deeper self of knowledge? When will you boldly live a life in alignment with your values? What would a model of living an attuned life give to those around you? This means that being in right relationship with yourself may put other relationships on trial. And let's face it, it's easier to hold accountable people you don't know, the strangers. It's far more difficult to look in the face of those you love, but who don't hold the same values as you do, while you're walking on a righteous path. But I have to say this to you today. Not doing this, not bringing forth your light, your gift, your love, doesn't save anything. Back when I was in college, I started a women's a cappella group. I sang with these women. I learned from these women. I loved these women. They taught me so much about love. I was the one Black person, though, in the group, and occasionally disagreements would come up. And these disagreements would be steeped in privilege and race, but I didn't have the language at the time to explain the experience. Over the last 20 years, as I've grown and evolved, and as our friendships have matured, I've found the language to describe my experience. But moreover, most of them have been bringing forth what was in them and doing their own work to learn for themselves how race and racism operate in America. There have been countless opportunities over the years to bring forth what is within me, and I thought I was. It wasn't until this last year that I really had to examine what I'd let myself believe was the truth, to really dismantle the wall that hid the pain and frustration and distrust. It was last year that I finally decided that if each of these individual relationships were valuable to me, then I had to stop sacrificing myself at the altar of politeness. I had to finally be honest about what it meant to be the black friend in a group of white women. Sure, it was polite of me to swallow unintentional microaggressions so no one felt uncomfortable, but I was internalizing discomfort and never being fully known as a given in those relationships. But I knew if I wanted to have deep relationships, I had to birth that discomfort. I needed to be brave enough to trust that they could hear the truth about my lived experience, even as it pertained to them. Now, I won't say that it went smoothly. It did not. It still has not settled itself out. And it is an exhausting work for the marginalized person to share her experiences. But I will say that for me, it feels better on the other side than it did trying to be nice by holding it all in. It was heavier on the other side. And most of my friends rose to the challenge of helping me hold the weight. My fear that I would lose my friends didn't end up being real. When I finally birthed what was within me, that thing gave our relationships life. Most of the women in that friend group were grateful that I shared with them. They let me know that I am valuable to them and they are willing to learn. Me hiding this inside was killing the growth and depth of our relationships. Real talk, the jury's still out on a couple of them, but we are still showing up to the table, bringing forth that which is within us. Now, what I am not saying is that if you identify with the majority, you should go around expecting the minority to lay everything out for you. What I am saying is that internalized white supremacy causes you to act in a harmful way. It is not until you are willing to face where it lies within you that you can uproot it. It must happen in big and small ways. You must even pay attention to the things you generally tune out. Do you expect the person coming toward you on the sidewalk to move, or will you move? Why? Will you hold the door for one person and not another? Why? How can you shift your actions to be more in alignment with your values? How can you design a life that is in attunement with who you are meant to be in this world? It is only by interrogating yourself, your true intentions, the root of what you think you know, what you hold dear, and bringing it all forth in the light of day, dusting it off, even maybe giving it a bit of a wash to get rid of the things that are no longer serving you, and releasing them, that you may have space for finding where your gifts meet the world. Beloved, may that be so.